It's time again this week that we get to hear from our Nebraska Extension agricultural climatologist, Al Dutcher. I'm Shaylee Peters, joining you back here on the Rural Radio Network. And Al, you, in visiting ahead of time, really hit the nail on the head with last week's forecast. Definitely saw several days of heat and some wind. And so what can we expect? More of that or something different headed into this weekend and next week?
Well, Shaylee, we're still going to deal with the heat, but not the intensity we've seen earlier in the week when we were pushing the upper 90s, and there's some isolated 100-degree readings in north central, northwestern Kansas. We'll be dealing with 90s around the state, but basically the real big heat will remain to our south of us as we land the periphery of that upper air trough. So they're going to try to work its way from the western United States across the northern plains over the next 4 to 5 days. And at the same time, we're paying attention down in the Gulf with crystal ball, because as it begins to move and is starting to move, make its northward movement over the Yucatan Peninsula, and will start to move out into the Gulf of Mexico, is expected to move in a straight north to northwesterly fashion up into central portions of Louisiana. So timing is going to be a key issue in this forecast, but the trough's going to lift out the next couple of days. And so the main activity at this point in time looks like it's going to be in the northern panhandle, north central, northwestern portions of the Sandhills, and up into South Dakota as the first piece of energy ejects out. So the renewed thunderstorm activity, some of that may drift eastward and clip northeast Nebraska. I wouldn't count on it. Otherwise, isolated thunderstorms may break out on some of these boundaries from last night's convection during the afternoon. But more importantly, we're going to see our temperatures basically stay around the 90, 95 degree mark in extreme southern Nebraska. We'll be in the low 90s across northern Nebraska into the upper 80s. And then as we go into the day on Sunday, we're going to start to see that low pivot out a little bit more. Another piece of energy ejects out. Looks like a real high chance for significant severe weather in western South Dakota all the way into eastern South Dakota. And some of that may impact the northern portions of the state, particularly the northern half of the Panhandle and north central Nebraska. Some of that may drift toward the south if we get some southeasterly moment, but most of it should move toward the northern plains. And then that trough starts to lift out, move into the western high plains as we get into the day on Monday. That's going to pull some heat up into our region. And then after we get past that point, the cold front starts to move through as that upper air low moves into the northern and north central plains. And as it does, we will start to see some of that moisture from crystal ball move northward and interact with the cold front that will be driving through the state. And there is a chance for some scattered thunderstorm activity from central Nebraska to our eastern Nebraska. And as that occurs, we will start to see very significant moisture materialize from the southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico all the way up into the central United States, basically the central plains region, maybe eastern Nebraska and points toward the east. And if it's a little bit faster, then most of that heavier precipitation will remain over Iowa and Illinois. 2 to 4 inches might not be uncommon before it finally all lifts out as we get into Thursday and Friday over the Great Lakes. That brings cooler weather into our region as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, before we turn our attention to yet another trough moving into the western United States, which will start to warm our temperatures as we go into next weekend. And there's a lot of uncertainty from that point, whether or not we get into a very active pattern as that trough tries to lift out and flatten over the central and northern plains, or whether or not we start to see another big ridge building in with a lot of heat coming into the mid-month period. But overall, it looks like our best opportunities for the northern part of the state, expect some of the drier areas for precipitation is going to occur over the next 3 or 4 days. And then we're going to have to wait probably another week before we get major opportunities for significant moisture once again.
All right. Thanks, Al. Nebraska Extension agricultural climatologist Al Dutcher. You're listening to the Rural Radio Network. Rural Radio.